Welcome back, everyone, to the This Week I'm Into podcast. Today, we're chatting about Ultimate Frisbee. I'm your co-host, Pete Tyler. Later on, we're having Paul's friend, Sophie Linde, join us. And right now, I'm with my co-host and friend, Paul Imberguglio. Paul, I would say I am really excited for this one. This is one of the ones that I'm starting from ground zero at. I feel like through all the topics we've gone through...
You've never played Ultimate Frisbee before?
I'll get into it. I have pretty much no experience playing Ultimate Frisbee, except for I think in 8th grade, middle school PE, there was an Ultimate Frisbee unit, and
that's the same for me.
I trying to remember, but I for sure don't have any experience beyond that, but I do remember playing a little bit in middle school for a couple weeks. But I just use that to say out of all the topics we've covered, most of the time I have some experience or have dabbled in, running or chess. But in this case, we're starting from nothing. So that's what makes me actually kind of excited to talk about this one. So I'll ask you, Paul, what is your experience with Ultimate Frisbee?
Exactly the same
Really?
as you, essentially, yeah. Except for maybe 7th grade.
Maybe that's a universal experience.
Yeah. Well, you know what it was? Is there was an after-school sports team that you could join in middle school that was Ultimate Frisbee, and they might have had an ABC team, but it was just anyone who wanted to play could join.
Oh, okay.
I didn't, but they did have it in PE class, which is how people learned how to play.
Okay, so you could take your experience from PE and then bring it to the after-school club if you wanted to. Okay. Did they do a good job selling it in PE that people wanted to join?
A lot of people did it.
Okay.
It was kind of cool. I don't know why I remember this, but I definitely was at, just a huge high school field, had a couple soccer fields width in it. Mm-hmm. So you can play a decent amount of 7th grade sized Ultimate Frisbee, right? Which I'm assuming is not full size regulation, whatever that is. Mm-hmm. And I just remember a bunch of tournaments going on just at my local high school for 7th grade Ultimate Frisbee. Looked kind of fun. It's when you have a huge soccer tournament and there's just 4 fields going on at once. I, on the other hand, am not good at it. For whatever reason, every time I pick up a Frisbee, I have to relearn how to throw it. I don't think I've been able to consistently throw a Frisbee straight in my entire life.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought this up. I literally have written in my notes, people who know me know I can't throw a Frisbee.
So. Oh, jeez. You'd think it would be so easy because we used to do these things in PE class in elementary school where we would do a Frisbee unit and I would get good at it, right?
Yeah.
I can throw things pretty far if if it's a ball. But there's something about a Frisbee where they're just it just starts to tilt as soon as it comes out of my hand and it goes straight in the ground.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I've tried again and again. I've had many people offer oh, I can teach you how to throw a Frisbee. It just never works. It's always so bad. But despite that, I've gone out with friends, thrown Frisbee in the yard, or gone Frisbee golfing a couple
10, 15
times.
feet.
Yeah. But I will.
Oh, right, Frisbee golf.
I will purposefully, whenever in college we were going out to throw Frisbee, I would purposely bring a soccer ball too, so I could just this is my thing. I can just kick around you guys throw the Frisbee. So
you're just such a bundle of fun and inclusiveness.
Oh yeah,
Hans.
Isn't it? Do you, Paul, want to give your best shot, and I can fill in any blanks too, or I can at least try? For if someone doesn't know what Ultimate Frisbee actually is.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what sport it's most similar to.
Yeah, it's kind of a combo of sports, I would think.
Yeah, because to be honest with you, what it reminds me most is non-contact rugby, mostly in the way that But it's not. That's a horrible description.
No, I think that's pretty fair. I think that makes sense in my head. Yeah.
Well, and the fact that you're a team and you try to go one way, and then if you lose possession, the team goes the other way. But there's no contact, whatever. I'll start over from the beginning. But basically, you have 2 teams of however many people, and you're just passing a Frisbee back and forth between your team trying to get it from one side to the other side end zone. And then, if you catch it in the end zone, you score a point. there's a couple rules where basically if the Frisbee ever touches the ground or is like intercepted, it immediately turns to the other team and the other team just goes towards the other end zone. So it's pretty fluid in that sense. And then I think the two big rules, which are pretty interesting, is it's non-contact. So to block, you have to kind of like stand at this radius around the person who's holding the Frisbee and can't move, who's trying to like throw it to their team to like either like swat it out of the air when they throw it, but you can't like push them, touch them, whatever.
Yep.
Or when you're like jumping up to like defend, you know, one that's in the air, you couldn't like push someone on the other team. You just have to like swat it out of the air. And then it's all self-reffed. I thought that was kind of interesting. I remember that being really crazy in 7th grade because you'd think that it would lead to more issues. Like if you remember in our Spikeball episode, the pocket rule, right, we were saying was like causing a lot of like, oh, you know, I don't believe what you called. But similar to that, like similar to Spikeball, it's like self-governed. So it's kind of just like on the honor of what you say happened.
Yeah, that through all the research I was looking at, that's what I found too, is like self-governing is actually a huge part of the game. And it came up again and again that there's something called the spirit of the game in Ultimate Frisbee. And I don't know if this is like something they teach at all levels, but it was certainly at the professional level or the top level, where it's like, I guess more so than other sports, like sportsmanship itself is like highly emphasized. So the spirit of the game is like, for example, you said it's non-contact, right? Like if you touch the offender when you're playing defense, if you touch the offender, then you have to like own up to it, right? So I don't know why, but that was like particularly emphasized. And it seems to me, we should ask Sophie about it, but it seems to me that there is like less argument in Ultimate Frisbee than like, for example, Spikeball that we talked about earlier before.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember clearly what happened in the 7th grade, but I do remember people calling things on themselves.
Yeah.
Like they're like, oh yeah, like my bad, I did hit them.
I love that about Ultimate Frisbee. It's like low-key wholesome.
Yeah, I bet maybe at the highest levels they must have like a referee of some sort, right? Because there's a lot of like little things where you know, you have to like count out, like I think you have to count out loud at some points, right? And so like
I saw that,
you know, how fast do I count versus how fast does someone else count, especially like in the heat of the moment, right? Like you probably start counting at different rates and stuff like that. So I wonder if they probably do refs at like the highest level.
I'm sure they do,
just to keep it, you know, completely above board. But yeah, generally pretty self-governed, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and like what Paul's referring to here is it's called like a stall. So I think the analogy of non-contact rugby is like, it's a very good one because it's a fluid game, right? If you catch the Frisbee, you can't take steps with it. Like you're kind of locked in place. And you have, at the pro level, I think it was 7 seconds to get rid of it. So the defender who's like in your kind of radius, who's not touching you, they count out loud. And if they make it to 7 at the pro level, I think it's more time at levels underneath, but I think at the pro level it was 7 seconds. If they make it to 7, it's called a stall, and it's like a change of possession. You lose the Frisbee if you hold on to it for that long. And I'm glad we talked about Spikeball. Another like really interesting equivalent I saw here was that, did you see it's not actually called Ultimate Frisbee? Like,
nah, that's another branding thing, isn't it?
It
like
totally
you're telling me
is.
It's like it's a tissue or a Kleenex. I'm not sure.
Yep, it's the sport itself is actually just called Ultimate because, similar to Spikeball, Frisbee is a trademark. It's owned by the Whammo toy company.
Oh, Frisbee is like the Frisbee is like the Q-tip.
Yes, yeah.
Like Frisbee's the brand.
Frisbee is Q-tip. Frisbee is Band-Aid. Frisbee is the brand. Yep. So, and just like, you know, Spikeball at the competitive levels, you know, they didn't call it Spikeball, they called it Round Net, right? Same reason. Yeah, Frisbee itself is trademarked. So even though we all know it as Ultimate Frisbee, like officially it's really called Ultimate, and I think it is like colloquially used as Ultimate as well.
So for like their associations or like leagues, they don't, like the only one that I saw was Ultimate Frisbee Association.
Okay, yes, I did see that too, and maybe we can get some clarification from Sophie, because I wonder how the Ultimate Frisbee Association can use the Frisbee name, but the sport itself is just called Ultimate. That was the same thing. There was the Spikeball Tour, but the game itself was called round net. So I don't know, like, look, I'm not a trademark lawyer. I'm not a patent lawyer here. Like, this is beyond me. But there's some like weird things about it. Yeah, and then I also wanted to talk about something really interesting I found was that Ultimate as a sport is recognized by the IOC, the International Olympic Committee. And so
are we getting Ultimate Frisbee LA?
Yeah, so it's actually eligible for the Olympic Games is what I saw. So I don't know. Maybe it will show up in 2028, but
let's get rid of breakdancing, put in Ultimate Frisbee.
I know it's really interesting because they have announced a couple new sports for the Olympics. This is a total tangent here. Like flag football, squash. I know I'm missing some, but
you know, I'm so skeptical about some of those. Flag football, I mean, come on.
This is a total tangent, but I know they've announced
I'm with Noah
sports.
Lyles on this one. Why are we doing flag football? Who the hell plays that?
I'll be watching.
That's like intramural. That's like intramural crap. If you're a professional flag football player, you just clearly couldn't cut it in some other discipline.
All right, Paul, be careful. You're gonna be called out for being a couch critic over here.
I've played flag football.
Okay.
I don't think it's that. I don't think it's as difficult as actual football. And there's not enough. Here's the thing. My issue with a lot of Olympic sports is that I think that there needs to be a significant amount of people who can try to play that sport or play it at a somewhat professional level for it to count. You know what I mean? Like, no offense to some of the horse ones, but actually, you know what? I take that back. Some of the horse ones, I actually do think a lot of people do that. I take that back. But there's got to be some that, like, nobody's ever heard of.
Yeah, at Raygun, the breakdancer.
Yeah, well, yeah. And it's just, like, a bunch of people breakdance, but nobody's doing that. Like, how is there, like, competitions for it? I don't know. I don't have a specific example, but I just think that flag football is a fake Olympic sport.
I think more likely than not, it will probably go the way of breaking, where it was, you know, around for one Olympic sport and then gone. But I just wanted to bring that up. It's like, I don't know, and I'm a little skeptical because they did announce the sports, like some new sports already. But technically, it is eligible for the 2028 Olympic Games. So who knows? But I guess that also kind of gives you an idea of like how popular it is. In a sense, if it's recognized by the IOC, then it's probably, you could consider like somewhat hit the mainstream at this point.
Yeah, and it probably has enough of a governing body then to standardize the sport.
I did just reach a little bit into the history of Ultimate Frisbee. If you want to hear, it's not an incredibly storied history, but there is some interesting facts here.
What was the original Frisbee made out of, Hans? Is that part of your...
Yeah. Did you find that too?
No. I just assumed you would have found that. I feel like that was right up your alley.
Sure did. The original Frisbee was actually a pie tin. Yeah, so there was a company, I don't want to butcher this, but from what I understand, there was a company called Frisbee that made pie tins. Obviously, pie tins are in the shape of what we now know as Frisbees, right? And
is it a Frisbee or is it an upside down pie tin?
Yeah, exactly. So students at different colleges, I saw like a little bit like conflicting research, but some say it was Amherst, some say it was Yale, started using the Frisbee pie tins to play like sports and do like competitions with. So that was actually kind of the origin of Ultimate Frisbee, or like the inkling of the idea. But then following that, there was a high school, Columbia High School in Maplewood, New Jersey, that actually created an Ultimate Frisbee team, and they played other high schools within New Jersey. So they kind of like spread this idea, this new sport. And the alumni from these high schools brought Ultimate Frisbee to their respective colleges and established like an intercollegiate league. The first game ever of Ultimate Frisbee was Rutgers versus Princeton in 1972. And this is really interesting to me because the first ever college football game was also Rutgers versus Princeton. This is 100 plus years before. Yeah, so
trendsetters of new sports.
Yeah, so maybe in 100 years, ultimate frisbee is gonna have the viewership that college football does today. The sport is completely exploded in popularity. There's about 7 million players according to usafrisbee.org. In 2017, Vermont became the first state to make ultimate an official varsity sport. So like I said, it's kind of hit the mainstream, you know? I think we've talked about spike ball, right? And I'm just using spike ball because it's easy to draw parallels here. I think it is a step ahead of where spike ball currently is, because it is a varsity sport. And interesting enough, some colleges actually offer scholarships for ultimate frisbee. Something interesting I found is if you're a good enough player, you're not only on one of these ultimate frisbee leagues, but you're also could be representing on the world stage. You could represent your country. So there's two
Ultimate USA.
Yeah, you could be ultimate frisbee USA for sure. I did see there's like kind of two main events on the world stage every year. That was the World Ultimate Championships and the World Games. And this year, the World Ultimate Championships is being hosted in the Gold Coast, Australia, and the World Games is being hosted in Hong Kong. So I thought that was really cool. If you're a top tier ultimate frisbee player, you might not just be in this like professional league, but you also might be representing your country around the world.
Yeah, think about it. You get a free flight to Australia and $25.
I know one Australian who might take you up on that. I think her name is Rachel Gunn.
Well, it wouldn't be as exciting for her because she wouldn't get to travel.
That's true. No free trip.
She'll go to the Hong Kong one.
Paul, before I got some fun facts for you for sure.
I want to get to Hans's fun facts. Hans's fun facts.
Thank you for the musical
Fun facts
intro.
with Hans. Yeah, it's actually great because the musical intro is different every single episode.
Yeah,
because I don't put in a new one. I just play whatever I'm recording at the time.
Okay. I wanted to give a shout out just to begin to some of my favorite teams from the Ultimate Frisbee League.
Wow.
Just because I liked their names. I have no other connection to them. I like the Salt Lake Shred. I thought that was sick. It's hardcore. Hardcore for Ultimate Frisbee team. There was the Carolina Flyers. I thought that was historically beautiful. First in flight, right?
baby.
Yeah, there
First
we
in
go. The Detroit Mechanics. I thought that was also historically accurate. The Minnesota Wind Chill. I thought that was geologically accurate.
And you know how much Hans loves geography.
I certainly do. And the Indianapolis Alley Cats. Just thought that was cool.
Alley Cat.
Yeah, it's a cool mascot, the Alley Cats.
I wish you could just see Hans's face when he says Alley Cat.
I love it. Besides that, I wanted to touch on what I brought up earlier, the World Games being hosted in Hong Kong this year. The World Games has been won by the USA Ultimate Frisbee team every single year it's been hosted, except for one where they lost to Canada. Yeah.
We should retire.
It's almost like the U.S. men's basketball team. Like,
you have to assume they're going to win.
You are expected to get gold. If you don't get gold, then you've failed. Like, the U.S. men's basketball, U.S. women's soccer, like, it's either gold or basically just considered a loss, you know. All right, I got one last one for you, Paul. And this is, you might like this because it's about Taiwan.
It's a Hans fun fact. Ooh, Taiwan fun fact.
Yeah. The largest ultimate crowd ever was about 50,000 people for the 2009 World Games held in Taiwan. That's pretty impressive, right? 50,000 people.
The Taiwanese, they love their pie tins.
They love their pie tins, but I have to give you, I don't want to lead you astray, Paul, little caveat here. They were paid attendees. So.
Oh, even better.
Again, like,
I just don't know who they're trying to sell that to, but whatever. I mean,
it's like I
grow how you want to grow, I guess.
I keep drawing this back to the Olympics, but you know how North Korea like pays people to like show up to their Olympic competitions and like pretend to be fans. you know.
Oh, I did not know that.
Oh,
But
okay.
I would
Well,
do it.
so I will say it was paid attendees, but I have to imagine if you were playing in that match in front of 50,000 people, like that has to be peak Ultimate Frisbee. Like that would be so special for those players.
Yeah, no. I mean, I would spend my $25 trying to get a couple people to come.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's all my fun facts for you today, Paul.
And that was Hans's fun facts. Hans's fun facts.
Beautiful.
Fun facts with Hans.
I don't really have an Ultimate Frisbee like resource to shout out, but in my research to learn what Ultimate Frisbee was, I did come across the UFA Ultimate Frisbee Association YouTube channel, and they had a nice little explanation of how to play Ultimate Frisbee and what the rules were. So I'll just give them a little shout out because they helped me on my research process.
Did they show you the different throws? I mean, I know how to throw a Frisbee two ways. Forehand and then what I'm going to call backhand, but it's kind of like, which I know doesn't mean anything on audio, but I was throwing it like on the right side of my body with my right hand. But then as I was talking to Sophie, there's other kinds. The only one that I can think of is called a thumber because it had a funny name. Don't know what it is.
Okay. Well,
but I think there's a bunch of different kinds.
Explain the thumber. I've seen like the tomahawk one before where you like do it overhead, but then they're so good at it where they put some kind of spin or something where they throw it overhead, but then the Frisbee like levels out and it's just a regular throw after that.
Yeah, we'll have to have her explain a couple of them, but you hadn't come across them in the UFA YouTube channel.
No, I'm sure it's somewhere out there, but not yet. Not in my deep dive. Maybe that's what I'll come across next.
All right, perfect. Well, that seems like a logical place for us to bring on Sophie. So after the break, she'll teach us what a thumber is.
Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Right now, we have Sophie Linde here to talk about her passion of Ultimate Frisbee. Sophie, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Could you just give a background about yourself and then a little background about how you got into Ultimate Frisbee?
Yeah, so I grew up with Paul. We were childhood friends, and I played soccer most of my high school and younger years, and then my junior year of high school, I started to get a little bit over soccer, and one of my best friends from high school went to a Waldorf school, which is like an alternative form of education for younger years, and their big sport in middle school is Ultimate Frisbee, and our high school had a team, and she was like, you should come try out, and I did, and I really liked it, and then I started playing in college, and I just started playing club this past year.
So what's your current involvement with Ultimate Frisbee? What does that look like on a weekly basis?
Yeah, so after I graduated from college, there's Club Ultimate Frisbee, which you have to try out for to make a team. And I tried out and I played on a mixed team, so men and women together with Pegasus in Seattle. And so we had practice. Most teams, this is pretty standard, will have about 2 practices a week. We had a 2-hour practice during the week, and then we'd have a 3-hour practice on Sundays. That can look different across different teams, but for the most part, it's about 5 to 6 hours of group team practice, and then we have workouts to do either individually or in small groups, and then we'll have 3 to 5 2-day long, sometimes 3-day long tournaments throughout the season, which runs from about June into October.
Could you kind of just explain a little bit about what the league structure looks like? Like, who does your club team play against?
Yeah, so USAU is the organizing body for Ultimate Frisbee, and the country is broken down into different regions. I don't know all of them off the top of my head, but there's the Northwest, Southeast, New England, and within each of those regions, there are sections. So there's a Seattle section, there would be a Montana section. Montana, even though it's a state, is its own section. And then so within each of those, there are teams. And so for season play, there are tournaments, and you put a bid in as a team to go. So there's tournaments all over the country all summer, and you put a bid in. Most tournaments, they somewhat depend on skill level. Within the club scene, there's like 3 or 4 tiers. So depending on where you finished last season, you're put into one of these brackets, and that kind of determines like what tournaments you're eligible for, or which ones you'll go to. So most teams, to be eligible for like the playoffs, I forget how many tournaments it is. You have to do so many tournaments, and then you'll play 2 to 4, and then postseason starts in September, and there's sectionals, which is where you play those teams in your section. And then from that, you'll have so many teams, like depending, I think from our section, it was like the top 7 or 8 teams went to regionals, which was like the whole Northwest region. And then from each region, the number of, they're called bids, varies from region to region, and that's who gets to go to nationals, and it's the top 16 team.
So do you, are you guys able to basically make it to the top region, assuming you play well enough? Or does your club team start at a level where there's like, you know, you're tier 1 or tier 2 and you would only ever like play against the top of tier 1 or tier 2?
No. So at sectionals, like everyone is invited to go. So you'll play, like you could have like a team who's ranked, I think there's something like 300 mixed teams in the United States. You could have a team who's ranked like 200 play a team who's ranked in the top 20, if that's just like how the brackets work out. So like there are teams who don't go to any of those like elite tournaments, and if they play well enough, could in theory like earn a bid to nationals. Like Ultimate is very much like you have to be good enough on the weekends that it really matters. Like that during like regular season, it kind of matters for rankings, but like where you finish in the bracket really, really matters as you get into that postseason play. You can be a team that's like brand new and make it to nationals.
Can you kind of explain the, like, if I'm a complete beginner to Ultimate Frisbee, which you don't have to mention that hard because I am, what is my, like...
We're literally talking about how we could not throw
yeah. We'll ask you that question too. How do I throw a Frisbee? Because I absolutely suck at that. But if I'm like completely new to Ultimate Frisbee, what's my like road to glory? Like if my goal is to be the best in the world or like win nationals or whatever the top echelon of Ultimate is, how do I get there? What's the steps I need to take?
Most people who are at that level, most of them start in high school and college. I'd say like that's
it's already
most
too
common.
late for me.
It's a little harder at this point.
Hans, you're technically still in college.
Oh, okay. So you can join your college men's team, and then you can start there. But a lot of people who are playing at like the world's nationals level, a lot of them started, I would say, in like high school. But obviously not for everyone. But if you were like just looking to get into Ultimate, USAU, that they have like leagues all over. So like your local league, you can just sign up. Like right now I'm doing Friday Hat League, which is where me and a friend of mine signed up. We got drafted, put on a team. We play every Friday night, and we play like other teams. It's also mixed, but then in the winter we have women's, and then there's men's, and then there's also Hat League. Or I mean, not Hat League, Team League. So if you wanted to like make a team with friends, you can sign up for a league, and they have like I think 4 skill divisions. So like people who want to play really competitively and beginners, and then a lot of times the local like Disc Northwest is what is the like organizing body in Seattle for Frisbee, and they'll do like beginner clinics as well. So you can join. I would say joining league if you're like new is pretty much the easiest way to do it, and then you just like people are usually pretty happy to like help and teach, and then there are clinics, and that's probably the easiest way to play.
You would say that it's mostly like actual league play. It's not like pickup in a park or like some other way of like finding people to play with. Like joining a league is probably an easier way to participate.
I would say if you joining a league, you'll meet people in the community, and then you can find out more about like pickup and stuff like that. Like a lot of club teams will host pickups and like mini throughout the season. Like social media is another good way. Like if you can figure out teams in your area, you can follow them and they'll post like about things that they're hosting. But league is probably the easiest way to like meet new people and meet people who are involved and like organize that kind of stuff. You can also, a lot of times there's like hat tournaments where you just like put your name in and you'll get assigned to a team for like a weekend long tournament.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so you're like random assignments basically for those tournaments. Okay. Is there something to be said about team chemistry there? Like if you're playing with these people for the first time ever, like Is
I've
that
never
more
done a hat
difficult?
tournament.
Okay, okay, gotcha.
Probably. I've never done it, but like people do. Like there are some that are like popular. People like have a good time, and it's just for fun.
Hmm.
But I've never done a hat tournament. But I mean, hat league is fun. Like I mean, it's never like it's the smoothest, and there's usually like a wide range of skill. That's kind of like what makes league fun in a lot of ways too. It's like playing with people who have never played before, and then playing like the age range is pretty wide. Like you have high school kids to like people 50 plus playing. So it's pretty cool.
Who are the other teams you're playing? Like, is there enough in league to play like other Seattle teams, or is it Pacific Northwest, or do you do any traveling for that?
League is just like local in Seattle on Friday
Gotcha.
nights, and
Hmm.
then I think there's like a league in East. I think there's one in Tacoma as well. Like there's a couple around, like but you don't really travel very far for league. And then
Gotcha. Hmm.
there's like playoffs, but it's not really like a. It's more for fun and like to get and to like play ultimate. Like a lot of it is like that's how like new people get into playing is through league.
All right, so I want to swap over real quick. Can you explain some of the nuances to Ultimate Frisbee that I would say like you wouldn't know if you didn't play in like middle school or high school?
Hmm.
I'm kind of curious because like Hans and I like kind of went over like some of the basics of like how the game works, but are there any like structures to like positions that like we don't know about, or is it kind of free for all? Is there any like interesting ways that club plays that you might not like think about it like a
Yeah, so it's 7v7, and then, like I kind of mentioned earlier, you can have like mixed gender, like there's mixed gendered teams, and then there's single gendered teams, women's and open. So it's 7v7 on the line. It's kind of similar to football in that like one team is like receiving the ball, and then the other team, and they're starting on offense, and the team that throws it down is starting on defense. And then when you're on the line, you typically will have three what are called handlers, and they're kind of like quarterbacks similarly. And then you have
ooh
four people who are cutters, and they are like downfield. And so the handlers are kind of like the ones who are primarily moving the ball and throwing it downfield to the cutters. And yeah, you throw it downfield, and you have to catch it in the end zone to score, similar to football. When you're playing defense, in your similar to sports, like you mark someone, you're counting 10 to 10 seconds. That's the stall. So you have 10 seconds with the disc to throw it to someone else on your team. And if you drop it, it's a turnover, and the other team picks it up and starts going towards their own end zone. And you switch end zones after every point.
We did see like it kept coming up. I don't know if you call it this, but the spirit of the game like kept coming up when
Mm,
we were doing our research. Is that a common terminology?
yeah, I don't know exactly how old Ultimate Frisbee is, but like back when it started, like the spirit of the game was a pretty, and still is, like a pretty unique aspect of the sport because it is self-refed.
Mm-hmm.
So you do when you make a call, like if someone, like if you're throwing and your defender hits your hand while you're throwing, you would call a foul. And then you would talk about what happened and try to come to a resolution.
Mm-hmm.
So if I call a foul on you and you don't think that you fouled me, like we would talk about it, and then we could come to like two. You could either contest it, and that means that it's basically like a redo, like, and then you could say the no contest, which means that like if it had been um, a completed pass, it would stay where it was when it was caught, or like if I had still had possession of the disc, the stall would reset to zero, or I could retract the foul call and play would just resume as it is. So a lot of like frisbee is about, or that I guess aspect of it is like how to have conversations about the plays on or the calls on the field. And spirit of the game also is about like being knowledgeable of the rules, which it can be confusing. The rules change every so often, and like as you get to like those more elite levels of frisbee, like knowing the rules is pretty important. Um, but a lot of like when you play other teams in frisbee, like the general attitude is like while it's competitive, but you want to still be like respectful and kind and like trying to remember like calls aren't personal. It's like a big thing. And the ability to like work through it. There are observers now, which are kind of like referees. Um, I haven't had a ton of experience playing with them, but they're supposed to like help. But the spirit of the game kind of refers to that like self-refing and ability to like work collaboratively with the other team to work through calls.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, ultimately, you're there for fun, right? Like, you don't want it to be just an argument fest. So I mean that makes a lot of sense to me. As far as the spirit of the game goes, like, have you in general throughout your playing noticed that everyone kind of follows that, or has there ever been like issues with the self-refereeing?
It depends. A lot of tournaments will, like, addition into your scoring of like how you're doing throughout the weekend, will also do a spirit score, which is where like the other teams will rank like how they felt you did.
Okay, interesting.
Wow.
Yeah, so like you could win like first in spirit or worst in spirit. I would say like between college and club, like that has looked pretty different. College is a lot more like silliness, and like you get like a lot of times after games you'll do spirit circles with the other team where you like line up and you mix the teams and you like talk about the game, and then sometimes like people exchange like little gifts to people they thought like embodied spirit of the game on the other team. And then usually you'll do like a group cheer. This I haven't quite seen as much in Club Ultimate.
Okay.
That kind of was just a college thing.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Some people really like that aspect. Some people don't love it as much.
Can you also just kind of highlight the main differences you've seen between college and Club Ultimate?
Yeah, I went to the University of Vermont for college, and we have a pretty strong program. I played on the B team all 4 years of college. Well, for one, not affected by COVID, but we had an A, a B, and a C team. And then I moved to Seattle, and Seattle's a pretty big ultimate Frisbee scene. And I had been playing League, and I had met some people, and I was like, oh, I think I'm going to try out for Club. And I had heard about a couple to try out for. And when I first started going to tryouts, I was like, wow, like this is a pretty big jump from the college ultimate I was used to playing. I knew like club would be competitive, but I wasn't trying out for any of the teams that were going to nationals. But even then I was like, wow, this is still like a pretty big jump. I'd also only had played women's up until I tried out for a mixed club team. I'd gone to some of the women's things here, but I ended up liking the vibe of mixed a little bit more, which was interesting. And definitely like the skill jump, and I think maybe just part of it just college, like you have more time. But like club was a pretty big time and financial commitment in a different way than college.
One of the things that I wanted to circle back on is how me and Hans can learn how to throw a Frisbee. I don't actually want to learn how to throw a Frisbee. Like, you don't have to get into the technical how to move my hand or my arm. But I do remember talking to your Frisbee friends that you guys just kept talking about different types of throws. And the one that stuck with me that I'd mentioned to Hans earlier was a thumber. But that one, can you like talk us through a couple of the different like common ways to throw a Frisbee?
Yeah, the general like two backhand, which is like what most people are used to, is like the arc, like you're going with your hand like facing you, your palm facing you, and throwing it out. That's like how most people would throw a Frisbee. And then it's a flick or a forehand, and that's where your palm is facing away from you and you're flicking it. Those are like the two general. And then within those, there's different ways that you can like angle the disc, like if you're angling it inside out or outside in, and that will like kind of dictate how it'll float through the air. But the two like basic throws are a backhand and a forehand.
Okay, so you guys just have all these fun names for them. Do people like try to throw them in the game, or is it like, no, those are kind of just for screwing around at a park, and like realistically you should probably just be throwing
no one's gonna throw
stuff?
I don't think many thumbers get thrown in play, but like a push pass where you just like push the Frisbee through the air, sometimes people throw those. A hammer is where you like throw it up over your head upside down, sometimes those get thrown. There's something called a scuba, which is like similar to a hammer, where you throw the Frisbee at like chest height upside down. Less common, but they do get thrown.
Everyone around you's just like, what the are you doing? Like, go straight to the ground.
Yeah, some of them. That's like the main ones. I'm trying to think of other funny.
I remember we learned how to throw Frisbee in elementary school PE, and one of the things that they wanted us to learn how to do is to skip it off the ground, which I guess really wouldn't work in the world of ultimate Frisbee, where I assume you can't let it hit the ground, but it does look cool.
We were at a tournament in Utah, and we were watching these two teams play, and someone did like, it looked like it bounced off the ground and kept going, and there was a whole debate about what to do, but it was down.
Did it hit
They
the
ultimately
ground?
Well, he was arguing that it just touched the grass, and then they were like, well, touching the grass is down. I don't know. It was kind of silly.
That guy's not
but
winning the Spirit Award.
No, he wasn't winning the Spirit Award. They don't. I don't even know if they do Spirit. They must. Well, also Spirit of the game comes in more too when you have like men and women playing together because you're like on the field with each other. Sometimes you hit each other or get smushed. There's a thing in Frisbee called backpacking, where like if you're jumping for the disc in the air and someone like lands on your back, you get backpacked, like they're on your back like a backpack. And so sometimes like spirit of the game is like, oh, like your male matching players are making dangerous plays against our female matching players.
Do they normally line up men to men and women to women, or does it not?
Yeah, you'll the terminology now. So there's DAOs, defender of women, and DOMs, defender of men. And then there's choice, which is like you're fine with either. I hadn't heard that terminology till I moved here, but it's kind of the DAOs and DOMs are the terms. But obviously not.
So far, I'm loving all the terminology.
I know. It's got good slang.
The scoobers, the thumbers, the dows, the doms, backpacks. I love it. Yeah,
the terminology is pretty good.
What advice would you give to someone like a beginner like me or Paul if we wanted to get into Ultimate Frisbee for the first time?
I would say that learning how to throw takes longer than like being able to like learn how to get open and catch the Frisbee. Like that doesn't take necessarily a lot more than just like some general athleticism. And like if you've played other sports before, I think like recognizing like what like open space means is not necessarily as hard of a concept to pick up. Becoming a good thrower like takes a lot of time and practice, I would say. Maybe there are some people who are right off the gate they were very good, but I would say for the most part, like even in the past year, like I feel like I've gotten better at throwing. Like I think that that's probably the hardest part of the sport to like master, I guess. But like learning how to like run, to cut, to get open isn't necessarily that different from like soccer or basketball in terms of like field awareness. So I feel like learning that, and then you're gonna feel awkward a lot on the field, depending on like how comfortable you are, and like kind of feeling like you don't know what to do. I feel like it's a pretty common experience when you're first learning to play, and feel it still at times. But and then I would also say like pushing your like I don't know, like playing league is a good place to start, and like making other friends who play and can help you probably.
How do you like divide your team amongst the throwers and the cutters? Because I imagine at your level, right, everyone has some capability to throw. So how do you decide position-wise?
Yeah, and then like we haven't really talked about this, but there's usually like defensive players and offensive players. So a lot of times when you make a team, you'll have like a D line and an O line, like similar to football, like a defensive line and an offensive line. Okay. Obviously, like if you're on the field and you start on offense and you drop the disc and turn it, you still have to play defense. You don't switch out your lines in the middle of a point. But like when you try out for a club team, like usually you're trying out more as like usually people kind of have a preference like as a handler or a cutter. So usually a lot of times like you'll be like, oh, I'm trying out as like one or the other. Some people do both. Cutters, I don't know. I handle usually for the most part. I think part of it is like what you like to do on the field. I think is like how do you view playing, and then skill set. Like if you're super fast and really a good runner, cutting is probably more suited to your skills of like running to catch those massive throws. And then there are people who are just really, really good throwers and can throw insane things.
Not Paul or me, but
I'm also really...
I'm sure those people exist.
Yeah, if I could get it to like actually fly more than 10 feet, I feel like I have this like the strength to do it. It's just there's a lack of skill.
I'll teach you, Paul. I'll teach you.
I know, we can go play.
Can you share like a memorable moment, funny story, anything that sticks out to you in your time playing Ultimate Frisbee?
One thing that I think about Frisbee is very fun and cool is there are a thing called party tournaments, and this is where people go to like drink and play Ultimate for like a weekend. My freshman year of college, we went to a tournament called High Tide, which is in Myrtle Beach, and it's like a couple day long tournament where you're at the fields, like people dress in crazy clothes, and you play Ultimate Frisbee. And this was like still when I was like relatively new to the sport, and there's like all these weird points that people do. And there is a call your mom point where everyone is on the field with one hand free and one hand calling their mom on the phone, which was...
That's wholesome.
It was
unless
cute.
You're drunk.
Awesome,
unless you're drunk, in which case I'm not sure.
Yeah, that was like pretty funny. I hadn't seen that before in any other sport, and now I've like gone to some other party tournaments. I went to this one in Wildwood, New Jersey, which is kind of a grimy place. It's beach ultimate, and I think that those are probably like my favorite thing about ultimate. I mean, I love club and I love playing competitively, but like going with your friends to a party tournament is pretty fun.
So with the party tournaments, it's kind of like there's a mutual agreement, like this is very much for fun, not not as competitive, I should say. We're here to have a good time, right?
I've never played in like a competitive division at a party tournament. Like, yeah, I would agree. I feel like that's kind of counterintuitive, but like you will play people who are taking it relatively seriously. But I've never been on one of those teams.
I'm thinking of it like beer golf or something, where you like every time you like finish a beer, you get an extra point or something like that.
Yeah, like we
Drunk Jenga.
would shotgun for point or for like to start with the disc. Like whatever team finished their shotgun first got to start with the frisbee. It's like a common one.
Some beautiful rules.
Yeah.
Yeah, these sound fun.
Yeah, like in college we used to have like pickup where we would like drink and like you would play with like a beer in one hand and throw. You only had one hand to throw and catch with.
Well, it's like Pong. You're required to no spilling.
And like I would say to like some extent, like at tournaments, that culture is still kind of there. Party tournaments are very fun, and they happen like all over. There's some in Hawaii, there's some in California. They're all over.
Where are some of the cooler places you got to travel for a tournament?
We went to Utah this year, I guess. Salt Lake was kind of cool, but I haven't gone. I mean, when I went to school in Vermont, I basically saw the entire East Coast playing Ultimate. I went to Maine, I've been to Rhode Island, New York, New Jersey, Virginia, North Carolina. Yeah, I saw like most of New England playing Frisbee, which was kind of cool. And we drove everywhere, so that was interesting.
I actually saw Sophie play at one of her tournaments, and she was playing in like middle of nowhere, like near Danville, Virginia, I believe. Mm-hmm. So she really got to see Virginia for that one. Maybe, hopefully, you saw somewhere else in Virginia.
It was pretty terrible. That was when we were driving back from Virginia, and we were driving back to Vermont. We were in like the school rented 12-passenger vans. There was an ice storm. And at like 3 a.m., our van slid off the road and hit a fence.
I don't know if I caught that part of it. You guys were still in
Yeah.
somewhat decent spirits when I saw you.
Yeah, we did. Our B team was like pretty good. We played with a lot of the A teams in our region, which was kind of fun. So that was always fun to beat teams that were like quote unquote better than us.
Is there like what does the college league look like, or is there like an intercollegiate cup or postseason or anything like that?
It's like pretty similar to club in that like you have like season, like throughout the season there's several tournaments. Again, you have to play like so many of them, and then there's sectionals. I don't actually know if there's sectionals. I think there's just regionals, and it's similar like with all other college sports. Like there's D1 and D3. So like the D3 have their own postseason, and D1 has their own postseason. And a lot of times, like within that, I don't know if D3 has A and B. They do as well. They have like A and B teams as well, and then D1 definitely has A, B, and C teams. And for A teams, they have like if you similar like there's bids to go to nationals. It's the top 16 teams based on your region. There's so many bids. So there's nationals for college as well.
Did Vermont ever make a run in in nationals or anything like that?
They went to nationals, I think every year, but my freshman year. The women's team was very good. They never won a national title while I was in school, but they made it to the semifinals 2 years in a row. The University of UNC has had like their women's team has had I think they've won like 4 or 5 years, maybe even more consecutively at the women's level.
Can you get recruited?
I don't know.
Would I be choosing UNC if I was a good Ultimate Frisbee player? Like, are they calling me?
It's a good question.
It seems like UVM, like there were some girls on the UVM team who were like really trying to convince like younger talent to come play. Again, this is a club sport. We receive like no funding from the university. Like it's like any club. Like you can apply for we apply for money and we get money through the school, but it's not a varsity sport. And you can play professionally now. So
yeah, is that a level above club? Like, is that like a paid league?
Yeah, it's AUDL, and I forget the name of the women's league. But it's like slightly different rules. I have a couple friends who play professionally on Boston Glory. There's a team in Seattle. There's a men's and women's team. I haven't really followed it that closely. They don't make a ton of money from it. I think it's like $50 to like $200 a game or something like that. Like they're not making a lot. Yeah, I don't know much about the professional world, but it does exist now.
You know, I'm surprised that it hasn't been a little bit bigger because I feel like, I assume pickleball, those players make a lot of money, or at least they did when it got like really big within like the year. I don't see that Ultimate Frisbee has the same hype around it to kind of like build up that quick infrastructure. They don't have like Shaq investing in a team.
No, we don't. I mean, I think the Ultimate's continuing to get more popular and like Worlds every year, like it used to. Like there's Worlds, which like but like no, like how there's like the non-Olympic like sporting games, like Frisbee's in that. So there's like Worlds tournaments, which is like again you'll have a men's, women's, and mixed team, and then there's like a U20 team, I think a U18 team. I don't know exactly all the ages, but there's like a couple age groups that go, and then there's like above a certain age. So it just happened down in Australia for like adult Worlds. In the US and like all the divisions kind of used to crush, but it seems like other countries are starting to like close the gap. I don't know as much about the world scene and stuff, but like it's definitely getting more popular, and I don't think the US, I don't even think they won every division. I don't know.
One thing that me and Paul kept finding when we were doing our research is that it was often just called Ultimate, not Ultimate Frisbee. Not okay for us to keep calling it Ultimate Frisbee, or where does that terminology come from?
I mean, isn't Frisbee trademarked? Isn't that like the capital F Frisbee? I don't know.
That's what we were thinking too, yeah. But
I mean, we mostly just
call it Ultimate Frisbee?
We mostly just call it Ultimate.
Yeah, it's bled into. Well, they have so much slang too. It wouldn't be cool to call it Ultimate Frisbee. It's too long.
Yeah, just
if
Ultimate.
Anything, you gotta even shorten Ultimate at some point.
Probably. Have you guys looked into like the names of club teams? Like they're kind of ridiculous. Some of them.
Hans had a couple.
Yeah, we found some good ones.
Do you have a favorite?
We were Pegasus. I liked Pegasus.
What were some of your favorite ones, Hans?
I think my favorite far and away was the professional team, the Indianapolis Alley Cats.
Can you say it with the same mouth movement? Alley Cat.
I think the team from Oakland is like the Spiders or something like that.
Oh yeah,
that's cool. The Detroit team was the Detroit Mechanics, which I thought like, okay, that's pretty on the nose. That makes sense.
That's pretty funny. Like the names are ridiculous. Like some of them.
Yeah, you get creative.
Hans
with
and I
it.
are gonna start a team and call them the Thumbers.
That'd be
or
good.
oh, actually, you know what? We're gonna call it the Doms.
The Doms and Thumbers.
It's so funny. Like they're like, we need a Dom on the field. We need a Dom on the field.
All right, Hans, get out there.
Awesome. Well, Sophie, obviously this podcast is kind of about, jumping into a new hobby every week, finding your passion. So what's kind of the elevator pitch for wanting to pick up Ultimate Frisbee?
I would say that the people who choose to play Ultimate are usually pretty fun and like tend to buy in on the culture in a lot of ways. There's a lot of ways and skill level to be involved, which I think is cool, and like you can keep learning and growing at every age. There's also masters, so once you age, once you're, I think it's like 35 for men or 33 for women, you can play on a masters team, and then it keeps going up from there. So it's a sport you can kind of play for forever at different levels, and I've always enjoyed Ultimate because like the amount of time that I've had in my life to commit to it, there's like something I can do, whether it's league or club or pickup. I think that's pretty fun, and I have really enjoyed all the people that I've met playing, and I think that's why I keep coming back to it, is just the community and like how much I enjoy those who play Ultimate. And I like having an excuse to be on a team and play club sports and like keep active. And I think that like Ultimate Frisbee is a really fun sport to play, and I enjoy that aspect of it, but it's definitely like the community and the people that I've met is the reason that I keep playing.
It definitely seems like Ultimate Frisbee, even maybe more so than other sports we've talked about, has an emphasis on community.
Yeah, it's been cool. And like it's been interesting in Seattle to see how there's been like a lot more initiatives to like expand the sport and like support people who have like not played as much, and like trying to get more involvement for like people of color and get like more equitable access to Frisbee, which has been cool too, to be a part of and like witness that I hadn't seen as much in college.
Do you have any plugs, either personal or clubs you want to give a shout out to, Instagram pages you want to give a shout out to?
Yeah, you're gonna have to figure out what your Instagram page is called.
What our team is called? Oh, I ran this too. I should know. It's pegasus.seattleult. That's the Instagram page that I ran for us. You should follow us. We post a lot of great content about Frisbee.
Yeah, give the Seattle Pegasus a follow.
Hey, that's
for
the
sure.
slang too. Ulti, not ultimate.
Ulti. That's, yeah, there you go. We shortened it. Well, it's already been shortened.
It just keeps getting shorter, yeah. Awesome. Sophie, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and good luck in your next party tournament.
Thank you. It's in January.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the This Week I'm Into podcast. And a huge thank you to Sophie Linde for sharing her passion on Ultimate Frisbee. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions for the next episode, please reach out at thisweekiminto@gmail.com. And please give us a follow on Instagram at thisweekiminto. Please rate us 5 stars and share this episode with a friend. We're doing our best to go to the podcast, and your help really goes a long way. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in the next one. Hey folks, are you tired of Frisbees that just look like Frisbees? Want something that adds a little slice of fun to your backyard? Well, get ready for a blast from the past with the Pie Tin Frisbee.
Hans, just to clarify, are we really selling pie tins as Frisbees now?
That's right, Paul. With Pie Tin Frisbee, you're not just playing catch, you're hunking around a real piece of aluminum metal. Will it fly? Will it hurt when you catch it? I'm not sure.
Nice. Let me guess, they're not dishwasher safe?
No, but they are backyard safe, probably. And bonus, after a day of tossing them around, each Pie Tin Frisbee doubles as a rustic serving tray for any pie-related emergency. Here, Paul, catch!
Ew, Hans, this one's sticky. Ugh, so I can play Frisbee and then immediately serve snacks? That's the dream.
It's fun and functional.
Yeah, I'd rather you just bust out a pumpkin pie recipe, to be honest.
So call now, because remember, when life gives you pie tins, make them fly. Just remember that This Week I'm Into podcast is not liable for any damage to your dishwasher or yourself.